The spaceport diner smelled of burnt oil and strong coffee, a place where tired pilots, smugglers, and merchants came to eat fast food before their next flight. Inside, a young human named Daniel moved between tables with a tray in his hands, his simple white shirt already stained from a long shift. He was a waiter, nothing more, and no one ever noticed him. He blended into the noise, into the background of lives that seemed bigger and brighter than his own. Every day felt the same for Daniel, the sound of alien tongues mixing with human voices, the clatter of dishes, the glow of neon lights through the glass. Sometimes he dreamed of leaving this life behind, of boarding a ship and disappearing into the stars, but dreams were for people with money, and Daniel had none. For him, survival meant serving tables, smiling at rude customers, and hoping for tips. That night felt no different, until the door opened and everything changed. At first, Daniel thought it was just another customer, but when he turned, he froze. A small figure stumbled into the diner, her steps weak, her silver hair messy and glowing faintly under the lights. Her skin shimmered with pale violet tones, her clothes torn and dirty, her large eyes wide with fear. She looked young, maybe just past her teenage years in human terms, but she was not human. She was alien and not the kind who usually walked into cheap diners. She stopped at the counter, breathing fast, clutching the edge as if she had run for hours. The few customers inside glanced at her, then quickly looked away. No one wanted trouble, and trouble was written all over her face. Daniel's heart beat faster. He should have looked away too. He should have stayed invisible just like always, but something in her trembling hands, something in the way she seemed ready to collapse, pulled him forward. Are you okay?" Daniel asked softly, his voice almost lost under the noise. Her eyes shot to him, bright and strange, full of both fear and hope. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked, dry and weak. Instead of words, she simply shook her head. Daniel looked around. No one moved to help her. The cook behind the counter muttered under his breath, "Not our problem, boy, keep working." But Daniel couldn't. His feet carried him closer. He pulled out a chair and gestured, "Sit here." She hesitated, as if afraid, but her legs gave out and she sank into the chair. Her hands clutched her stomach, and Daniel realized she was starving. Without thinking, he hurried to the kitchen, grabbed a bowl of soup meant for another order, and set it in front of her. The girl stared at it as if it was treasure, then began to eat, fast and desperate. Each spoonful shook in her hands, each swallow looked painful, but she did not stop. Daniel sat across from her, his heart racing. He didn't know who she was or why she was in such a state, but one thing was clear. This girl was running from something. The bell above the diner door rang again, sharp and loud. Daniel turned and his blood ran cold. 3 alien guards walked in, tall and armored, their faces covered with masks of black steel. They carried shock rifles, their boots heavy on the floor. The diner went silent. Every customer stared down at their plates. The leader's voice was cold, mechanical. "We are looking for a runaway," he said, scanning the room. "A girl, small, violet skin, dangerous. If anyone has seen her, speak now." Daniel felt the girl stiffen in her seat. Her hands gripped, the bowl so tightly it nearly cracked. Her wide eyes begged him for silence, for protection. His chest tightened. If he spoke, the trouble would pass him by. If he stayed quiet, he would bring the danger onto himself. The guard's helmet turned toward him. "You, human waiter," the voice ordered. "Have you seen anyone unusual tonight?" Daniel's mouth went dry. Sweat slid down his back. Everyone in the diner was waiting, listening. The cook behind the counter gave him a sharp look, as if warning him not to make a mistake. Daniel's eyes flicked to the alien girl, her lips trembling, her shoulders shaking. She was terrified, alone, and no one else would help her. In that moment, Daniel felt something inside him change. For the first time in his life, he was no longer invisible. He had the power to decide, to protect, or to betray. He swallowed hard, then forced a small, casual smile at the guard. No, Daniel said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. No one unusual here, just the usual drunks and travelers. The guard studied him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. Very well, the voice said, cold and sharp. We will continue searching. Remember, if anyone hides her, punishment is death. The guards turned and left, their boots heavy, their shadows long. The diner slowly returned, to its noise as if nothing had happened. But Daniel knew nothing would ever be the same again. The alien girl looked at him with wide, wet eyes. Her lips moved, whispering words so soft he barely heard them. Why did you save me? Daniel had no answer, not yet, but deep down he knew his simple life as a waiter had just ended, and something far greater had begun. The diner was loud again, but Daniel no longer heard the noise. His heart still pounded in his chest. The alien girl sat across from him, her spoon trembling as she tried to finish the soup, her eyes never leaving the door. She looked like a bird trapped in a cage, every muscle ready to fly, but with nowhere to go. Daniel leaned closer, whispering, "You can't stay here, they'll come back." Her lips parted, as if to speak, but fear locked her voice. Only a weak whisper came out. "Please, don't let them take me." He looked at her. Small, fragile, but something in her voice carried weight, like she had seen horrors no one her age should face. The cook behind the counter scowled at Daniel. "Boy, you're a fool if you get mixed in this. She's trouble. You'll end up dead." But Daniel ignored him. His decision had already been made. "Come with me," he said softly, standing. The girl hesitated, then nodded, trust flickering in her eyes. He guided her quickly through the back of the diner, past crates of supplies, and the smell of frying grease. The narrow back door creaked open to a cold alley filled with shadows and dripping pipes. Daniel pulled her inside, shutting the door quietly behind them. The girl shivered, hugging herself, her torn clothes barely covering her thin frame. Daniel took off his old waiter jacket and draped it over her shoulders. She looked at him in surprise, as if no one had ever done something so small and kind for her before. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice still weak. Daniel crouched beside her. "Who are you? Why are they hunting you?" Her eyes darted around the alley, making sure no one could hear, then she leaned closer. "They will kill me if they find me," she said, her words quick, full of fear. "I ran. From them. From my own people." Daniel's stomach tightened. "Why?" Her lips trembled, her violet eyes filling with tears. "Because I know a secret I was not supposed to hear." She pressed her small hands against her chest as if to protect her heart. "And if they take me back, they will silence me forever." Daniel didn't understand, but he knew one thing. This girl was not lying. Her fear was real. Before he could ask more, heavy boots echoed in the alley. Voices shouted in a strange alien tongue. Daniel's blood froze. The guards were close. He grabbed her hand. "This way." They slipped deeper into the alley, crouching behind old metal bins and piles of broken machines. The girl's small hand clung to his, her grip tight and desperate. The guards' shadows stretched across the walls as they searched. One stopped near the bin where they hid, his boots inches away. Daniel held his breath. The girl buried her face against his shoulder, her body shaking. The guard's helmet tilted, scanning the darkness. A long silence stretched, then the guard turned away, barking an order. Their footsteps grew distant, fading into the night. Daniel exhaled shakily, his body weak with relief. The girl looked up at him with wide, grateful eyes, whispering, "You saved me." Again. He tried to smile, but fear gnawed at him. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a fighter. He was just a waiter. What chance did he have against armored killers? Still, something inside told him there was no turning back now. If he abandoned her, those cold voices would haunt him forever. He couldn't do it. "Come on," Daniel whispered, pulling her hand. They slipped through narrow streets, neon lights, flickering above, the air thick with smoke and whispers of danger. The spaceport city never slept, merchants argued. Ships roared overhead. Criminals eyed strangers in the shadows. But no one dared help. No one dared cross the alien guards. Finally, Daniel guided her into an old storage shed behind a row of abandoned shops. He pushed the broken door open and led her inside. Dust and rust filled the air, but at least it was shelter. She sank onto a crate, her body shaking, exhaustion washing over her. Daniel sat nearby, trying to catch his breath. For the first time since the night began, silence wrapped. Around them, the girl lifted her head slowly. Why are you helping me? Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, unsure of the answer. Because you needed someone, he said simply. Her eyes softened, shimmering in the dim light. No one has ever said that to me, she whispered, almost as if it hurt. Daniel felt something heavy in her words, something more than fear. She wasn't just running from soldiers. She was running from a life where kindness did not exist. He opened his mouth to ask her name, but before he could speak, a loud metallic clang echoed outside the shed. The girl gasped, standing quickly, her eyes wide with terror. Daniel froze, his heart racing again. Someone was outside. Shadows moved across the cracks in the door, and a voice called out, sharp and commanding in the alien tongue. The guards had found them. The shed was silent except for Daniel's fast breathing. The girl pressed against the wall, her violet eyes wide with fear. The shadows outside shifted. Heavy boots scraped the ground. The guards were close, too close. Daniel felt his heart hammering. He had never been in a fight, never held a weapon, but now he was hiding from killers. The girl grabbed his sleeve, whispering, "If they take me, you must not let them, please." Her voice trembled, but there was steel beneath the fear. She would rather die than return. Daniel swallowed hard, nodding. Though he had no plan, the door rattled as if someone tried to push it. Then footsteps moved away, fading slowly. Minutes stretched into hours, until finally the street outside grew quiet again. Daniel slumped back against a crate, his whole body shaking. The girl sank to her knees, covering her face with her hands. For a long moment they said nothing. Only the sound of their breath filled the dusty shed. Finally, Daniel whispered, "You need to tell me why they're hunting you. If I don't understand, I can't help you." The girl looked up, her cheeks damp with tears, her lips trembling. "My name is Lyra," she said softly, her voice heavy as if the words carried weight. "I was born into the house of Vareth, a powerful family in my people's empire." She clenched her fists, anger sparking in her eyes. "But my family is not what it seems. They are cruel, hungry for power, and they have made a plan that could destroy millions." Daniel frowned, trying to process her words. "Destroy millions? What do you mean?" Lyra leaned closer, whispering, "They want to release a weapon, something old, something hidden beneath the colonies. It can wipe out entire human settlements, cities gone in seconds." Her eyes glistened. "I overheard their council speaking. They want to start a war against your people." Daniel's stomach dropped. His hands went cold. He was only a waiter, but even he knew what that meant. If what she said was true, then humanity was on the edge of slaughter. "And you ran because you wanted to stop them?" Daniel asked. Lyra nodded, her voice breaking. "If I stayed, they would have forced me into silence, or worse, used me as a pawn to prove loyalty. I had to escape. I had to find someone who would listen, someone who would warn the humans." She gripped his hand suddenly, her small fingers cold and desperate. "That someone is you." Daniel's breath caught. "Me? I'm nobody. I'm just a waiter," Lyra finished, her eyes intense. "Yes, but you chose to save me when no one else would, don't you see? You were meant to find me." Her words shook him, deep inside where he kept his fears and dreams locked away. He wanted to deny it, to laugh at the idea, but the way she looked at him with trust, with hope, he couldn't. The air in the shed grew heavy, silence pressing on them. Daniel whispered, "If they know you're here, then I'm already a target too." Lyra lowered her gaze, guilt flickering across her face. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to drag you into this." Daniel shook his head, forcing a small smile. "It's too late to turn back now. We'll figure something out." But even as he said it, fear gnawed at his gut. He had no idea how to fight an empire before. He could say more. A sharp crack echoed outside. The sound of a communicator. Voices barked in the alien tongue. Closer now. Searching again. Lyra's face went pale, her body trembling. They won't stop. They will search every street until they find me. Daniel stood, his fists clenched though he felt powerless. Then we can't stay here, we need to move before they trap us. He peeked through a crack in the shed door. The guards were fanning out, scanning with bright searchlights. If they stayed, they'd be caught within minutes. He turned back to Lyra. Come on, we'll head toward the docks. Maybe we can find a ship, a way out. Her eyes widened. You'd leave everything behind for me? Daniel hesitated, the question cut deep. His life had been simple, safe, but empty. And now, with one choice, everything had changed. He nodded firmly. Yes. For the first time, Lyra smiled, a small, fragile smile as if the weight crushing her had lifted for just a second. They slipped out of the shed, sticking to the shadows, the streets alive with danger. Daniel kept her close, his mind racing. She had trusted him with her secret, and now it was his too, a secret worth killing for, a secret that could ignite a war. As they crept past a neon-lit wall, Lyra whispered, Daniel, if you ever doubt why you're doing this, remember, millions of your people don't even know the danger yet. You're their only chance. Daniel's chest tightened, fear twisting with determination. The sound of boots thundered behind them. Shouts filled the air. The guards had seen them. Daniel grabbed Lyra's hand, running into the maze of alleys, his heart pounding. Every corner could be their last. Every step could lead to death. And yet, through the fear, one truth rang in. Daniel's mind. He was no longer just a waiter. He was now carrying the most dangerous secret in the galaxy. The first escape. The night air was sharp, filled with the neon glow of signs and the distant roar of starship engines. Daniel and Lyra sprinted down the narrow streets, her small hand locked in his, their footsteps echoing against metal walls. Behind them, shouts in the alien tongue grew louder, heavy boots striking the ground like thunder. Daniel's lungs burned, his heart pounded, but he did not stop. Every instinct screamed at him to let go, to hide, to save himself. But each time, he looked at Lyra, her violet eyes wide with fear. He knew he couldn't. They turned a corner into a crowded bazaar still open despite the late hour. Merchants shouted their prices. Customers bargained loudly. Lights flickered from stalls filled with strange foods. And glowing machines. Daniel pulled Lyra through the crowd, trying to blend in. For a moment it almost worked, until a guard's voice shouted above the noise, There! The human and the girl. The bazaar erupted in chaos. People scattered, stalls overturned, crates spilled across the floor. Daniel and Lyra darted into a side alley, crates crashing behind them as guards forced their way through. Daniel's chest heaved, sweat dripping down his face. He had never run like this in his life. Never fought, never defied soldiers, but tonight he was doing all of it. They reached a dead end, a tall fence blocking their path. Daniel cursed under his breath, looking around desperately. The guards, shadows stretched closer, their voices sharp, weapons clattering. Lyra tugged his arm, pointing to a stack of broken crates leading halfway up the fence. Daniel nodded, boosting her up first. She scrambled, her small body slipping but catching. Again her hand reached down for him. Come on! Daniel climbed, his arms burning, legs heavy. The guards burst into the alley, rifles raised, energy bolts sizzled against the metal wall beside him, sparks raining down. Daniel pulled himself over, landing hard on the other side. Lyra fell beside him, gasping, her hair glowing faintly in the dark. They staggered into the next street, blending into the shadows. The guards shouted from the other side of the fence, their voices echoing with fury. Daniel leaned against the wall, his chest on fire. We can't keep this up, he panted. Lyra's face was pale, but her eyes were fierce. We have to reach the docks. There might be smugglers, traitors, someone who can help us leave the planet. Daniel nodded, though. His mind screamed at the insanity. How could two fugitives escape an entire empire's reach? But he had already chosen, and there was no going back. They moved quickly through the city's underbelly. The streets grew darker, filthier, filled with beggars and broken machines. Stray lights flickered, and the smell of oil and smoke choked the air. Every sound made Daniel flinch. Every shadow looked like a soldier waiting to strike. But Lyra pressed on, her steps small but steady. Daniel noticed how she leaned on him, exhausted yet still determined. Despite her fragile body, her spirit burned brighter than anyone he had ever met. Finally, the wide shape of the docking district appeared ahead. Giant starships loomed above warehouses, their engines glowing faintly. The air was alive with the hum of machinery and the hiss of fueling lines. If they could slip onto a ship, maybe they could escape. But as they drew closer, Daniel froze. Dozens of guards were already stationed near the gates, their black armor reflecting the neon glow. They were searching every person, scanning faces, inspecting cargo. Lyra's grip on his hand tightened, her body trembling. "They know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "They know we're coming here." Daniel pulled her back into the shadows of an alley, his mind racing. They couldn't go through the gates, not with so many soldiers. But maybe there was another way. He spotted a narrow maintenance tunnel half hidden behind stacked crates. A sign flickered above it, "Restricted access." Daniel pointed. "There, we'll try it." Lyra's eyes widened with doubt, but she nodded, trusting him. They slipped into the tunnel, the air damp and cold, pipes running along the walls. Each step echoed too loud, the silence pressing on them like a weight. Daniel's hand shook, but he forced himself forward. Halfway through, a low growl stopped them. Two alien patrol beasts emerged from the shadows, their bodies tall and lean, eyes glowing red. Their sharp teeth gleamed as they bared their jaws, growling louder. Lyra gasped, stepping back. Daniel froze, his mind blank. He had no weapon, no way to fight. The beasts advanced, claws scraping. Against the floor, Daniel's eyes darted to the pipes above. Steam hissed from a loose valve, the pressure rattling it. Without thinking, Daniel jumped, grabbing the valve and twisting it. A jet of scalding steam exploded downward. Hitting the beasts, they shrieked, stumbling back into the shadows, retreating with angry howls. Daniel dropped down, coughing, his arms burned from the steam. But the path was clear. Lyra stared at him, her eyes wide with awe. You saved us again." Daniel gave a shaky laugh. "Don't sound so surprised." They reached the end of the tunnel, pushing open a rusted hatch. It led directly into the lower docks, hidden from the guards. The massive ships towered above, their engines glowing, workers shouting orders. For the first time that night, Daniel felt a spark of hope. Maybe they could make it. Maybe they could actually escape. But just as he turned to Lyra, the sound of boots echoed again. Dozens of guards poured into the dock, their rifles raised. The leader pointed straight at them, his voice booming. "There! Do not let them leave." Lyra's hand clutched Daniel's tightly, her eyes full of terror and faith all at once, and Daniel realized the first escape had only just begun. The docks roared with chaos, workers shouted, engines thundered, and alarms echoed across the BU. Massive hangars, Daniel and Lyra ran between towering crates, their shadows flickering under the harsh floodlights. Behind them, the guards shouted orders, boots pounding closer, rifles humming as they powered up. Daniel pulled Lyra into the shadow of a loading crane, his breath ragged, his mind raced. Too many soldiers, too many eyes, they couldn't outrun them forever. He glanced at Lyra, her chest heaving, sweat on her glowing skin, yet her violet eyes still burned with determination. Even cornered, she didn't look ready to give up, Daniel whispered. "We need to hide. Just long enough for them to pass." She nodded quickly, trusting him without question. They slipped behind a stack of cargo crates, crouching low. The air smelled of oil and iron. The ground shook with the tremble of ships preparing for launch. Through a crack between the crates, Daniel saw the soldiers sweep the area. Searchlights scanned every corner, one beam passing so close it brushed over Lyra's face. She pressed herself against him, trembling. Daniel wrapped an arm around her, shielding her as if his body could protect her from the light. For a moment, time froze. He could feel her heart racing against his chest, her breath warm on his shirt. And then, slowly, the lights moved on. The guards marched further into the Doc's Lyra looked up at him, her lips parting to speak, but no words came out. Instead, her eyes softened, filled with something more than fear, something like trust, something like gratitude that cut deep into Daniel's chest. He swallowed, whispering, "We're not safe yet." She nodded, but her hand stayed on his, holding it tighter than before. It was as if letting go meant the world would swallow her whole. They slipped deeper into the docks, weaving between shadows and machines. Everywhere soldiers searched, but somehow together they stayed unseen. Daniel guided her toward the lower hangars, where smaller ships rested. Traders' vessels, smugglers' freighters. If they could sneak aboard one, they might escape. As they crouched behind a fuel tank, Lyra finally whispered, "Daniel, I've never met someone like you." He glanced at her, frowning. "What do you mean?" Her voice shook, but she kept speaking. "My people, they only see power, wealth, bloodlines. No one shows kindness, not to someone like me." She lowered her gaze, her hands trembling. "When I ran, I thought no one would help me. I thought I would die alone." Daniel felt a heavy knot in his chest. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't strong. But the way she looked at him, as if he was her only light, made him want to be. "You're not alone anymore," he said firmly. Surprising, even himself with the strength in his voice. Her violet eyes shimmered, her lips trembling as if she might cry. But instead she smiled. A small, fragile smile, the first he had seen on her face since the night began. Before the moment could linger, a sharp whistle cut through the air. Daniel peeked from the shadows. 3 guards marched toward the fuel tank, scanning with rifles. His chest tightened. "We have to move now." He grabbed her hand and they slipped out the other side, running low to the ground. They darted across an open stretch, spotlight sweeping dangerously close. A warning shot sizzled past them, burning into the metal floor. "Stop!" a voice roared. But Daniel didn't stop. He pulled Lyra harder, pushing his legs until they ached. They stumbled into a maintenance bay, the door sliding shut behind them. Inside was quiet, filled with the hum of dormant machinery. Daniel leaned against the wall, chest heaving, his body trembling from exhaustion. Lyra collapsed beside him, her small frame curling against his arm. For a moment neither spoke, only their breathing filled the silence. Then she whispered, almost shy, "You keep risking your life for me. Why?" Daniel stared at the floor, struggling for words because he didn't know the answer himself. He had lived his whole life unnoticed, unseen, but with her, this fragile, desperate alien girl, he felt alive for the first time. Finally, he said softly, "Because you need me." Her eyes widened, shimmering with unshed tears. "No one has ever said that to me before," she whispered, her voice breaking. She leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. Her small body trembled but slowly. The tension eased as if his presence gave her a moment of peace. Daniel froze at first, unsure if he should move, but then he let her rest. He wrapped his arm gently around her shoulders, protecting her from the cold. For the first time, she looked like just a girl, not a fugitive, not a secret. Just someone who wanted safety. And for the first time, Daniel felt like more than a waiter. He felt like someone who mattered. But their moment was cut short. The bay door rattled violently, voices shouting outside. The soldiers had tracked them again. Lyra clutched his arm, fear flooding her eyes. Daniel stood quickly, pulling her up, his jaw set. "They're not taking you, not while I'm here." The door groaned, sparks flying as soldiers forced it open. Daniel's heart pounded, fear mixing with courage. He had no weapon, no training, nothing but his will. But Lyra's hand in his gave him strength. As the door began to tear open, light flooding inside, Daniel whispered to her, "Stay close, to me no matter what happens." And in her trembling voice she answered, "I will." The maintenance bay door screeched as metal bent under the guard's force, sparks raining to the floor. Daniel stood in front of Lyra, his fists clenched though he had nothing to fight with. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't trained, but he couldn't let them take her, not after everything. The girl's small hand clung to his sleeve, her violet eyes wide, trembling. "Daniel," she whispered, You can't fight them, they'll kill you. Her voice broke, but there was no fear for herself in it, only fear for him. The door tore open and 3 armored guards stormed inside, rifles raised. Step away from the girl, human. The leader barked, his voice cold and sharp. Daniel's heart pounded, his mouth dry. He wanted to obey, to survive. But when he looked at Lyra hiding behind him, he couldn't. No, Daniel said, his voice shaking but firm. She's not going with you. The guards froze as if shocked at the defiance. Then laughter echoed from their helmets, dark and cruel. You are nothing but a weak human waiter, the leader hissed. You will die for your foolishness. The guard stepped forward, raising his rifle. Lyra gasped, clutching Daniel's arm. But before the trigger pulled, Daniel shoved a nearby crate, toppling it into the soldier. The rifle fired, a blast searing past his ear and burning into the wall. Run! Daniel shouted, grabbing Lyra's hand. They sprinted deeper into the bay, weaving between machinery. Energy blasts scorched the floor, sparks flying around them. Daniel's chest burned, his lungs on fire. But he didn't stop. Every step was survival, every heartbeat louder than the shots chasing them. They dove behind a heavy engine core, the air hot and thick. Lyra pressed against him, her body shaking. Daniel, she whispered, tears in her eyes. You can't keep this up, you'll die because of me. Her voice broke, guilt heavy in every word. Daniel looked at her, sweat dripping down his face. I'd rather die protecting you than live knowing I let them take you, he said. The words surprised even him, but they were true. In that moment he realized his life had always been small, meaningless. But with her, he had found something worth risking everything for, her eyes filled with tears, her lips trembling. You're not just a waiter, Daniel, she whispered. You're braver than anyone I've ever known. The guards split up, sweeping the bay, their boots clanging against the metal floor. They were closing in, rifles humming. Daniel looked around desperately. There was no way out except the launch doors that led to the open docks. But beyond those doors were even more soldiers. It was suicide. Still, he knew they couldn't stay. He grabbed Lyra's hand. Stay behind me, no matter what. She nodded, though fear glistened in her eyes. Together they bolted from cover. The guards shouted, firing, blasts striking metal beams, sparks raining down. Daniel and Lyra ran straight for the launch doors, slamming the controls. The doors hissed open, flooding the bay with cold night air and the blinding glow of the docks. Dozens of soldiers turned, weapons ready. Daniel froze, pulling Lyra behind him. It was hopeless. They were surrounded. The leader stepped forward, his voice like steel. Human, surrender the girl and you may live. Lyra clutched Daniel's arm, her body trembling. She whispered, Please don't die for me. Her words cut deep, but they only made his choice clearer. Daniel stood taller, his voice steady. I'm not giving her to you. The leader's helmet tilted. A low growl. Escaping, then you both die. The soldiers raised their rifles, glowing with deadly power. Daniel's heart pounded, his body tense. This was it. The moment he had to decide. Fight against impossible odds. Or try one last desperate escape. His eyes darted to the side. A small freighter sat on the edge of the dock, its ramp half open. Workers distracted in the chaos. It was their only chance. Daniel squeezed Lyra's hand, whispering, When I say run, we run to that ship. Her eyes widened, fear mixing with fragile hope. She nodded, trusting him completely. The leader lifted his hand, about to give the kill order. Daniel took a deep breath. Run, he shouted, pulling Lyra with all his strength. They sprinted across the dock, rifles firing, energy blasts exploding around them. Metal hissed, crates shattered, smoke filled the air. Lyra stumbled, but Daniel pulled her up, refusing to let go. The EEM freighter's ramp loomed closer, hope burning in his chest. But behind them the guards closed in, shouting, their footsteps pounding like thunder. Daniel knew the truth. He couldn't outrun them forever. At some point, he would have to make the final choice: stand and fight, buying her time to escape, or risk everything and throw them both onto that ship, gambling with fate itself. He clenched his jaw, his eyes fierce. Whatever happened, one thing was certain. He would not let her be taken, not while he still drew breath. The dock shook with thunder as weapons fired, lights flared and soldiers shouted. Daniel pulled Lyra with all his strength, their feet pounding across the metal floor toward the freighter's ramp. Blasts scorched the ground around them, the air filled with smoke and fire. The freighter crew shouted in panic, some scattering, some raising tools like weapons. The ramp began to close, the ship preparing to leave. Daniel's heart pounded. If they missed it, there would be no second chance. Faster, he shouted. Though his lungs burned, Lyra stumbled, her small body weak from exhaustion, but she clung to his hand, refusing to let go. The soldiers behind raised their rifles, their leader's voice booming. "Stop them! Kill the human! Take the girl alive!" The next shot whizzed past Daniel's head, nearly striking him down. He turned his body, shielding Lyra as much as he could. His legs screamed in pain, but he forced them forward. The ramp was halfway closed when Daniel lunged, throwing Lyra onto it first. She gasped, scrambling forward, her violet eyes wide with terror and hope. Daniel grabbed the edge, pulling himself up, but hands clamped around his ankle. A soldier had caught him, yanking hard. Daniel's grip slipped, his body dragged back toward the ground. Lyra screamed, "No, Daniel." Reaching for him, his eyes locked with hers, her small hand stretched desperately. For a split second, time slowed. He could let go, save himself from pain. But if he did, Lyra would be taken, silenced forever, and everything he had fought for tonight would mean nothing. With a roar, Daniel kicked back with all his strength, slamming his free foot into the soldier's mask. The grip loosened. He pulled himself up, crawling onto the ramp as the ship lifted higher. Lyra grabbed his arm, dragging him with surprising strength. Together they tumbled into the freighter's cargo bay as the ramp sealed shut. Blasts from below struck the ship's shields, rattling the walls. But the freighter engines roared, pushing through the fire. And then, with a burst of light, they were airborne, soaring into the night sky, leaving the soldiers shrinking below. Daniel collapsed against the cold metal floor, his chest heaving. Lyra fell beside him, her small body shaking, her hands clutching his shirt. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the hum of the engines filled the silence. Finally, Lyra whispered, her voice breaking, "You didn't let me go. You saved me." Daniel turned his head, meeting her tearful eyes. He gave a weak smile. "I told you. I wouldn't." She pressed her forehead against his chest, her body trembling with sobs. But they weren't only sobs of fear. They were relief, they were gratitude. Her small hand gripped his tightly, as if she would never let go again. The freighter captain, a rough-looking smuggler with scars across his face, stepped into the bay. He scowled at them. "You two nearly got my ship blown to pieces. What in the stars are you running from?" Daniel sat up slowly, his body aching. He glanced at Lyra, then back at the captain. "Something bigger than you want to know," he said quietly. The captain studied them, then shrugged. "Fine, but if you're trouble, you'd better be worth the risk." He turned away, barking orders to his crew. Daniel looked at Lyra again, her violet eyes shimmering in the dim light. For the first time since meeting her, there was no fear in them, only trust, only hope. "You don't have to keep running alone anymore," he told her softly. Her lips trembled, and she whispered back, "And you don't have to live unseen anymore." Her words struck deep into his heart. He had been nothing, a waiter, a shadow in a diner. But now, with her hand in his, he felt something more. He had a purpose, a bond that tied his life to hers. The stars stretched before them as the freighter left the planet's orbit. Daniel stood by the viewport, staring at the endless sky. Lyra joined him, wrapping his jacket tighter around her small shoulders. Her head leaned against his arm, her voice soft. "Daniel, you've changed my life forever." He turned, smiling faintly. "Funny, you did the same to mine." Outside, the galaxy shimmered with danger, with wars and secrets waiting. But for Daniel, fear no longer held him. He wasn't just a waiter anymore. He was the protector of a girl whose secret could change the universe. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. He and Lyra would face it together, hand in hand against everything.